and welcome to Mike Drops the Mic. I'm Mike Lyman. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Mr. Kevin Hines. Kevin has one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard, one of the most moving stories. He's a survivor, a motivational speaker, a global award-winning speaker, and he's author of the best-selling book, Cracked Not Broken. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I failed to mention in the introduction about how big of a Deadpool fan and Venom fan and Marvel fan that you are. I know if you're listening, you can't see, but Kevin has a Venom hoodie on right now, and I see Deadpool behind him, and you're showing me a couple minutes ago some of his Marvel artwork. So that's exciting as well. Absolutely. When did you develop such a fanhood of Deadpool, and why Deadpool in particular?
Deadpool in particular, because he was born in pain and so was I. I was born in squalor, in severe poverty, to biological parents who, after they had me and my brother, fell to hard times and dealt with drugs and alcohol and became substance users, and they would die very tragically of that substance use and various other issues and mental illness. And so I always say I was born in pain, and Deadpool was as well. And so I connect to that character very much. I'm not as snarky or ridiculous as Deadpool, but I do enjoy the way the character breaks the fourth wall and says what's on his mind. So I enjoy that.
I had to ask about that because I've seen you always have a Deadpool hat on, and I've seen Deadpool socks and all kinds of stuff from you. I wanted to ask about that.
I'm a big Marvel fan in general. I showed you earlier, but I've got the whole wall there.
Yeah,
I really enjoy the Marvel universe and really comic books in general. I'm actually making my own cosmic version of my life story into a comic book. So,
oh, no way! Does that have a title yet?
The title is Hope Dealers, and it follows the journey of Lady Death trying to take me at the Golden Gate Bridge, and then I live with chronic thoughts of suicide. We'll get into that, but sure. I have regular thoughts, and so the idea in the comic is that she's always trying to get me to take my life, and I'm always trying to survive the pain.
Wow!
And the metaphor is to help people survive their pain, no matter what they're going through, and that'll be the idea of the comic book, is to share with people these mental health journeys and to connect with. And so in the comic book, we have real people in my life that are non-superheroes. They're the average person, but they're going out of their way to help people in mental pain. Not just that, at night they're going out and fighting supervillains. So it's gonna be a great.
Oh, wow,
great
that's beautiful.
story. Yeah.
So do you have a release date or anything for that yet? Or?
I don't have a release date for you. We're still working on it. I'm still finding a way to get it done. But the writer we have on it is phenomenal. His name is Jordan Pinkney. He's a great friend of mine, and he is a talented, gifted comic book writer.
And you're talking about Lady Death waiting for you at the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, that's Lady Death. Originally, that's who Thanos from the the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He had a different motive in Infinity War and Endgame, but originally, like in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, he was in love with Lady Death.
Right. Yeah.
That's her.
Yeah.
That's very interesting how you're going to put that in there. And wow, I'm excited to see that. That'll be awesome.
The idea is she kind of comes in and morphs into different people in my life. So she's always trying to trick me by being someone that I know. And so it's gonna be a fantastic series.
Wow. Yeah, that's very exciting. And I'd like to get in and talk a little bit about your story, if that's okay. I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. Would you be willing to give it away to you, and would you be willing to talk to me a little bit about your story? I have an idea because, as I've mentioned, I've listened to you talk numerous times on the internet, but if someone isn't maybe familiar with you, what would your background be?
Absolutely. I'm glad to talk about it. So I talked about this. I said this briefly in the beginning. Born in severe poverty, birth parents on drugs. Life wasn't easy from the get-go. I was being fed what my mom and dad could steal. Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk was my first diet. I had a distended belly filled with liquid abuse from the top of my sternum to the bottom of my abdomen from being malnourished for so long. My gut to brain health was very, very poor, and I was mentally ill from the very beginning. In the beginning of my life, after my brother and I were placed into foster care, my only full-blooded brother, Jordash, we were supposed to be adopted together, but we both got bronchitis and he died. And so I immediately developed a severe detachment disorder from reality and abandonment issues that follow me until today. And I always say that every time somebody I love dies, I feel like they're leaving me on purpose and I can't shake it, no matter how much therapy I do. And I do a lot of therapy. But I ended up back in foster care and bouncing around from home to home. And eventually I, unlike my poor brother, got very lucky. I landed in the home of a great group of foster parents, couple of foster parents, who had me in their home in a transitional situation. And that's when Deborah Joan Hines walked in their door. And you know my last name, so this works out, you know.
Sure.
And Debbie Hines walked in their door, and she was looking for a little girl to take home to be the sister of Elizabeth Catherine, the girl she and Patrick Kevin Hines had already taken in. But she took one look at me, and as she says in her journal of those days, which is obviously how I know this story, she said that was the moment she fell in love, and she went back to Pat Hines, and they said, let's take him in, he needs us. And they took me in at 9 months of age, and I was very sick because of the gut to brain health issues. But no doctors knew that science back then. They weren't aware of it. So they assumed that it was all emotional trauma. There was nothing physically wrong with me, when in fact there was. 30 days in the Hines home, and neither Debbie nor I slept a wink. I kept her up every night. She was exhausted. Doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, no one could tell them what to do with their new son. And eventually, on the 30th day, Debbie came to my crib and she leaned in and she said, Gio, my birth name is Giovanni, by the way. She said, Gio, you're safe. We're not going anywhere. But if you don't knock this off, we're going to give you back. Complete contradiction. And that was the first night in 30 days we both slept soundly. As if my infant mind fully heard, understood, and grasped her words. On the 31st day she came to my crib, she leaned in and she said, I looked up at her, I smiled. And she feels like this grand moment we shared together, you know. But from that point on, two things were abundantly clear. I was home and I was a Hines. And they were mom and dad, and they saved my life. Pat and Debbie Hines, I always say in my presentations, my keynotes, could have had natural born children, but they took in 3 kids from 3 separate homes into this one household and made a melting pot of a family. I'm mixed. My birth father is half Mexican, half Italian. My birth mother hails from Jamaica. She's Jamaican, Black, Arawak, Indian, African, Portuguese, Scottish, Irish, English, and Sephardic Jew, basically everything but Russian.
Wow.
Very mixed. My brother's Black from a different family. My sister's white from a different family. My parents are Irish and German. And I always say people were very confused when they saw us walking down the street together. We didn't care. We were happy. And growing up in that household was a beautiful thing. They gave us the world, you know. And I really thought growing up, this is perfect. Everything's going to go the way it should. I'm going to grow up. I'm going to get into that good school like my dad's always talking about. I'll get that great job everyone's always speaking of, and I'll be successful because I have been given what so many in this country don't have: opportunity and a chance. Unlike my birth parents, I got a chance. Unlike my birth brother, I got a chance. And then it all came crashing down. At 17, my brain officially broke. I had a complete mental breakdown in front of 1,200 people. And I didn't recover for the better part of a decade. From 17 to 19, I was just all over the place.
Yeah.
Battling this disease, bipolar, the same brain disease both my biological parents had before me. I'd go up and then I'd crash, because once you go up, you must come down, you know. And at 19, I couldn't bear the brunt and the weight of this depression any longer. And I attempted to take my life, and I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. I would learn immediately upon the moment of free fall that it was the single greatest regret I would ever have. And it was an instant regret. Instant regret. All I wanted to do was reach back. All I wanted to do was grab back onto that rail, but I was falling headfirst. closing in on 75 to 80 miles per hour, nearing the speed of terminal velocity, falling 250 feet, praying that I would live. I vividly remember the fog feeling like shards of glass going into my face. It's the most terrifying moment of my life.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm a man of faith. I don't press that upon anybody.
Right.
I want people to have faith in themselves. I want people to have faith in the idea that they could be here tomorrow and every day after that. They never have to die by suicide. But I have faith in God, and I prayed to God. God, please save me. I don't want to die. I made a mistake in the water. And that's when something began to circle beneath me. Something very large and very slimy and very, very alive. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't die jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and a shark is going to eat me. Perfect. Perfect. And I'm punching this thing, it won't go away. It circles faster and faster, faster and faster. No longer am I wading in the water to stay afloat or trying to tread the water. I'm lying on top of my back, being kept buoyant by this creature going beneath me, circling around underneath me. And I would later learn that it was no shark. It was, in fact, a sea lion, and it was keeping me afloat to the Coast Guard boat ride behind me. Now, call that what you want. That's my miracle. That's my miracle. I always believe.
That's a miracle. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I end up, you know, the Coast Guard gets there, the creature takes off. I don't know what it is until later. And the Coast Guard pull up their boat next to me. They kind of fish me out of the water and pull me onto a flat board that's right there next to the water. And they put me in a neck brace, they strapped me in head to toe, and they started asking a bunch of questions. And the first question was, kid, do you know what you just did? I was fully conscious and aware. I said, yeah, I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. They said, why? And I said, I don't know. I thought I had to die today. And the senior officer leans in and he goes, son, do you understand how many people we pull out of these waters that are already gone? And I said, no, and I don't want to know. He said, young man, this unit alone, this year alone, has pulled out 27 dead bodies from these waters.
Wow.
And just one live one, you. And this gave me the greatest point of perspective I could have ever received in my entire life. And I made a cognitive decision at that moment on that Coast Guard boat, that no matter the pain I would be in for the rest of my life, I would never do anything like that again. And as I said, I've lived with chronic thoughts of suicide, so they plague me, but I'll never die that way. Sure. I think about it. I sometimes begin to plan it, but I'll never die that way. I'll always do the right thing. And that right thing, I want to teach people to be resilient all over the world when I travel and tell my story. That right thing is to turn to the person next to you, whether you know them from Adam or not, and say 4 simple but effective words. I need help now. I believe we have to be held accountable for our actions. I nearly died by my hands, but I never needed to attempt in the first place. I needed to ask for help. And yes, I am well aware that there are many people, a lot of people around the world that feel they have no one. So you have to search outside of your personal network sometimes and say, I need help to the randomest people in the world. But by the sheer probability of you asking more than one person and asking people, your person after person after person, someone will be willing to empathize with your pain. That is how I have stayed alive with chronic thoughts of suicide for 21 years. I always say I need help now. It's my shorthand. My family knows what it means. My wife knows what it means. You know, my colleagues know what it means. And when I was at an airport, I was in Atlanta airport. I asked the TSA agent. They took me to a locked room and they did a threat assessment and they made sure I was safe from myself and from others. But they kept me safe because I asked for help. So sometimes, even in the darkest of our hours, we have to recognize that we can be our own saviors. We can't always rely on other people. We have to ask for that help if people are going to be willing to give it to us. And then you have the people that, you look at all the people in the world that are mentally unstable, mentally unwell. And there are so many. There are so many millions. For all of those that are around them that are doing well mentally, that are successful, that are, mentally stable and healthy, they need to be taught the tools to ask the right questions to not just the people in pain, but to their strong friends that seem fine. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means? The crisis text line algorithm has determined that those three questions get more truthful answers than even the question, are you thinking of suicide? Or the question, are you thinking of self-harm? Because are you thinking of suicide? There's a taboo on the word suicide, so people don't want to answer that question. And are you thinking of self-harm? By definition, self-harm is not suicide. So you have to ask the right questions. But before you ask those very deep, sensitive questions, you have to start the conversation at the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table and say things like, hey, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I'm really worried about you. I love you very much. I really care about you. That's the reason I'm asking these questions. It's not to offend you. I'm here for you. I've got your back, but please answer these next three questions truthfully. That setup allows the person to release their defense, their defensive nature when you ask them the question, are you thinking of killing yourself? Because it's a daunting question to ask. Nobody wants to ask that question.
Right.
Because they're terrified. They're terrified of the answer. But the only way we're going to get the answer is if we ask. The old guard, the old thought was if you ask that question, you'll put the thought in someone's mind and they'll go take their life. That's nonsense. That's been disproven so many times. It doesn't put the thought in someone's mind who's not already thinking about it. But if they are, you've just given them permission to speak on their pain. And a pain shared is a pain halved.
Wow. Yeah, that was beautiful. And I think it's so important to talk about the best ways to reach out to someone to see if they're okay. And if you are not okay, being able to reach out and ask for help. And I think that's so important. And that's one of your missions right now that, like you said, going around and talking and sharing your story. I think what you're hoping to do is spread the message of it's okay to ask for help. And if you are okay, how can you ask for help?
Right.
So I wanted to talk still a little bit about your story. So the sea lion saved you. And I've actually read online about how your story is one of the most famous stories of an animal rescuing a human, which is pretty incredible. I mean, a sea lion saving you, keeping you buoyant because your legs were broken. And
my right leg was sprained. My back was broken.
Okay.
I shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae into shards, and I swam to the surface from 70 feet beneath the water because when you hit that water from that height at that speed, it's like hitting a solid brick wall. You go down 70 feet because a vacuum sucks you under because of the impact and the velocity at which you're falling.
Right.
So I go down 70 feet, open my eyes, I'm drowning. I'm freaking out. I get to the surface barely before I run out of air. I was convulsing before I got to the surface. I thought I was going to drown. I get to the surface, and very soon thereafter, the sea lion circles beneath me. And imagine you're laying there, and I'm laying there flat, and it's hitting the back of my knees and my elbows and my shoulder muscles and my back, and it's just going in this circle beneath me.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a sea lion, so I'm waiting for it to bite me,
Yeah, sure. You said thinking it was a shark at the time.
Yeah.
And you said how you prayed on the way down and when you were in the water, God, I made a mistake. God, please save me.
Yeah.
Do you think that God could have had a hand in bringing that sea lion to save you?
No, I don't think I know. I'm as I said, I'm a man of faith. I don't push on people. People can believe what they want. I have a friend who said, who told me, he goes, he thinks in very binary terms, ones and zeros, and he said, Kevin, it had to happen to someone. It happened to you.
Yeah. Sure.
That's his belief, and that's his prerogative, and that's fine. That's not what I believe. I believe that God saved my life that day and gave me this mission to try to help others stay here. And it's been true to form, because in the last 21 years of doing this work in suicide prevention, I started speaking 7 months after my attempt on Good Friday at my Catholic school that I went to as a kid. And I told my story to 120 7th and 8th grade kids in that class. And I got 120 letters in return. Now, I'm no fool. They were mandated to write those letters, but they weren't given parameters on what they could write. And what they wrote to me in these letters was their most personal thoughts about the presentation. And they wrote of their pain and their struggles. And a lot of these kids, as a matter of fact, 6 of them, in fact, were actively suicidal, and they wrote about that. And because the letters were screened by the teachers and the staff of that school, and the priest that put it on, the kids were given the care and the help that they needed, and their parents were told what was going on, and those kids are alive today.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
And in traveling the world for 21 years doing this and sharing this story, I've had hundreds of thousands of people write to me and say different things like, this story saved my life. This story changed my life. This story brought me back to faith. This story has changed my life forever. And often when we release new videos, which we do every Friday on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kevin Hines, there's a mental health hack every Friday. People write into the videos on a regular basis and say, this video saved my life, that video saved my life, and this video and that video continue to save my life every time I watch it. So we know that 2 things. Video media is the fastest way to reach anyone today. The problem with that is there is so much garbage, violence, and negative video media that is damaging our youth and adults alike. Why not go and create a production company that creates only positive media? And that's what some groups in Hollywood are doing, and that's what my wife and I are doing. We created the company 17th Montgomery Productions, and we produce online video media and documentaries that go international that are dedicated to changing lives. And a lot of these videos are science-backed, evidence-informed, and entertaining ways to keep people healthy, well, and change their life.
When you change someone's life, whether that's you going to a talk, a speech, or one of your videos that you've posted on YouTube, and you see the comments or you see the reactions that say, Kevin, your story has changed my life. Your story has saved my life. Your story has inspired me. What does that mean to you? What does that feel like, knowing that you've impacted someone's life so much?
It's the greatest gift. Now I'll make it clear. I don't claim to save lives. People tell me I do. And people tell all kinds of speakers that they do, and storytellers and filmmakers and musicians. I've heard it all before. I share a message, a story. They go home after that story, they do the work, and they save and change their own life. It's a matter of perspective. They change their perspective after hearing a story. They change their point of view. And that's the biggest thing in this life, is that if you look at pain and you believe pain can defeat you, then it will. If you look in the mirror every day and you hate yourself and you say, I hate you, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're dumb, like I used to do, then that's what you are going to believe, and that's going to be your ethos. But if you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're the greatest, you're the most amazing, you're phenomenal, you're fantastic, you're a walking phenom, and you should be here tomorrow and every day after that, then you will. It's a matter of perspective and perception. And that's one of the biggest problems in America today, is that our kids are self-loathing to no end. And they're self-loathing a lot of times because of abusive and neglectful things that are going on at home, or abusive and neglectful things that are going on at school with bullying and things like that. But if we can teach people how to recognize their value, then they can stay here. If we can teach people how to be resilient in the face of pain, they'll always remain. And that's really where I come from in my perspective, is that I want to teach people in every audience I speak to, whether it's an international digital audience or video audience, or whether it's a keynote address. I want to teach the people in that audience that they have value, they are worthy, they are loved, they matter. Suicide is never the solution to their problem, it is the problem, and they can survive their pain no matter what that pain is. We look at pain in a very a very narrow-minded way in America. We look at pain and then we say to ourselves, it's too painful, we can't overcome it. Both physical pain and emotional and mental pain. But people around the world, cultures around the world look at pain differently. There are cultures around the world that literally produce opium for America, for drugs for physical pain in hospitals, but don't take it themselves. And they use meditation to get through their physical pain. Why aren't we teaching that to people in America so that they can defeat their physical pain?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. I know that especially when you're talking about physical pain and mental pain, perhaps with stress and anxiety, COVID has been shown of how much of an impact it's had on people's mental health, physical health. And one of the things that I feel they need to talk more about is the importance of diet and exercise that can have such a positive impact on your physical and mental health. I heard you talk before about dairy and how big of a terrible effect that dairy can have on a diet and inflammatory foods and things like that. I was wondering if you could speak on that a little bit, and foods and exercises that you use that you feel like have helped better your life.
Well, let's get into it. So there are two, everyone says there's these kind of food groups, but really there are two types of foods: inflammatory and non-inflammatory foods. Inflammatory foods are processed foods that are packaged and overly processed and damaging to your gut. And non-inflammatory foods are whole foods that are beneficial to your gut and your brain. If you're eating a diet consisting of only or mostly processed foods, you are damaging your brain. The people in food deserts and the people in low-income housing that are eating only processed foods are more aggressive, violent, mentally unstable, mentally unwell, anxious-ridden, and depressed. The people that are eating properly, non-processed foods, foods that come from the ground, foods that come from lean meats, food that comes from vegetables and green foods, they're the most non-inflammatory foods you can find are healthier physically, emotionally, and mentally. That's a pure fact. The problem is the opportunity for some people to get those non-inflammatory foods is not available. It doesn't exist. How do you tell a person on Section 8 housing who's getting food stamps to go buy non-inflammatory foods from Whole Foods that cost so much money? They can't. We have to correct that disparity, and we have to change the food options in high schools, grade schools, and colleges for the people in the lowest income echelon to get them to safer food so they can stabilize their brain health. One of the biggest reasons we see a problem in the military with suicides, in my opinion, is because of the foods a lot of the military is eating. Or now they've started to change this. Let me be very clear. But there are still bases around the military that the fastest, easiest way for you to eat is Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, and Starbucks. I'm sorry, those foods are damaging their brains and are affecting their suicidal crisis. That is a simple fact.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I've hearing you speak on that. It gives something to consider, but it's so tough for some people when they go to McDonald's and they have the dollar menu. And it's all about putting priorities, right? So you maybe pay a little bit more if you can for healthier food options, inflammatory foods, or you go and you get the double cheeseburger for $1 extra. The dollar menus at all these fast food restaurants, and it's just pure garbage that's affecting your brain and physical health, whole body.
Yeah. And there are ways to solve this crisis in America. I think we just need to be clever about it and need to be innovative.
Sure. One more thing I wanted to say about your story. So a year after you attempted to take your own life at the Golden Gate Bridge, you went with your dad. And could you tell the story of picking the flower?
Yeah, you bet. So a year after my attempt, on the date of my attempt, I had forgotten that it was the anniversary. My dad calls me and he goes, "Kevin, do you know what today is?" And I said, Dad, it's Tuesday. He said, "No, Kevin, what's today?" I said, "Oh, wow, it's the anniversary of my attempt." He said, "Yes." He said, "Kevin, I'm coming to pick you up. We're going for a drive." And I said, "Well, where are we going, Dad?" He said, "Like I said, for a drive." And so we I get in the car, and I literally get in the car at the same spot he dropped me off at a year prior when I attempted. So I get in the car at City College, and he still won't tell me where we're going. And we start driving down 19th Avenue. We start going down to Park Presidio, and there's only one place to go, and that's the Golden Gate Bridge. And he pulls over on, I think it was Clement Street in Park Presidio, if I'm not mistaken. And there's this police officer union building right there, and with a flower bed in front of it, and a bunch of police cars, a bunch of police motor bicycles. And I'm looking in the window, and there's a bunch of police officers in their dress blues, with their rank pins on and everything. And he's like, Kevin, pick a flower out of that flower bed. I'm like, Dad, you pick a flower out of that flower bed, you get a fine in San Francisco. He goes, pick a damn flower. So I go on, I pick a flower, and I jump back in the car, and the police didn't follow us. They were too busy.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And we go out to the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm like, Dad, I don't want to do this. What are you doing? I can't do this. He says, Kevin, we need closure. And I'm thinking to myself, you need closure, old man. I need to go home and lay down. And he goes, Kevin, we need closure. So we get there, and I got nauseous before I even got out of the car. And we get out, and we walk onto the Golden Gate Bridge, and I've got vertigo. I'm dizzy. I'm nauseous. I'm sick to my stomach. I don't want to be there. And my dad leans into me, and he says, show me where. And I knew exactly where I'd attempted. I took him to the exact spot. And he grabbed my left hand in his right. And we said an Our Father and a Hail Mary. And he said, drop the flower. I reached out, and I dropped the flower. It wafted down very slowly. And 2 feet to the right, when it hit the water, after the ripple effect, popped up a sea lion.
Yeah. And
it was arguably the most beautiful moment I've shared with my father, next to him being the best man at my wedding, and there was no other choice.
Sure. And I think that's when I heard that part of your story and just hearing about the sea lion, really your whole story. I mean, that's definitely one of the most moving stories I've heard, one of the most inspirational. And I also, I'm faithful and I believe in God. And I think that your story is a perfect example that miracles do happen. And I think the sea lion, the day of the attempts and a year after, is a perfect example that God's with you and he has your back. So thank you for sharing that. So since then, you've developed the Kevin and Margaret Hines Foundation. And what is the mission of your foundation?
The mission of our foundation is to help both high school students and college students find ways into the mental health field. It's to get them, that's part of the mission, to help them get educated in suicide prevention and brain and mind behavioral mental well-being, and get them to work in a career in mental health. We try to help people by building scholarships and raising funds for different organizations and different groups to get them the education they need to join the field. And because one of the things that's happening in America is our psychiatrists are aging out. They're 70, 80 years old, and then they're retiring, and we don't have enough people trying to become psychiatrists, psychologists. That's just a simple fact in America. We need to educate people that this is the biggest crisis in America's history is mental health. I think the number that the World Health Organization has determined is that there will be 2 billion people living with a diagnosed mental illness in the coming years.
Wow. That's a staggering number.
It's terrifying. Or mental health condition of some kind. And so we need representatives from all walks of life to get into this field and help the people that are in mental pain, especially the ones that are doing well.
Sure. And if someone wanted to donate to your foundation, how can they go about doing that, or spend some time, resources, money? What would be the best way to go about doing that?
The best way to do that is Facebook. Yeah, they can go to Kevin Hines story on Facebook and find that.
Okay, perfect. Well, Kevin, one of the last things I like to do for my interviews is what I call 7 quick questions. So
Okay,
there's 7 short answer questions that can be about what we talked about or not what we talked about, just to get to know you a little bit better. Is that okay?
sure.
All right. Question one. Besides Deadpool, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie uh, would have to be Ace Ventura,
Okay.
Pet Detective.
So my next question. So if Deadpool, which it looks like he will be introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, um, who would you like to see Deadpool team up with or fight than in the
Well,
existing Marvel movie?
I have all the comic books, so he's got to team up with Spider-Man.
Okay.
Spider-Man's my second favorite. Spider-Man and I share anxiety.
Yeah.
You know,
And a
yeah,
Spidey sense, maybe, huh? Maybe.
and Spidey, maybe, who knows?
So would you like to see Ryan Reynolds Deadpool team up with Tom Holland Spider-Man or Andrew
Yes, yes.
Garfield?
No, my favorite is absolutely Tom Holland. That kid is a genius at that role.
Okay, perfect. And who would you like to see them fight?
The Sinister Six.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Great
Or,
answer.
or a multiverse of the Sinister Six, so there's like a multiple version of the Sinister Six. That would be bananas.
Well, they're kind of like with the Morbius movie coming out, and in the
Yeah,
trailer for that, Michael
yeah,
Keaton's Vulture's in that.
yeah,
The credit scene of Homecoming,
yeah,
Scorpion's in that.
yeah.
I think they got something brewing there behind.
I want to see Tom Holland Spider-Man webbing up a wall with Deadpool holding onto his back, like in the comics.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. So you've traveled many places across the globe to speak. Where has been some of your favorite spots you've traveled to speak and tell
You
your
know,
story?
this always gets people confused, but I'll tell you, one of the best, most wonderful places I ever spoke was Arnold, New York,
Okay.
and it was snowing, and it was beautiful. I made a snow angel, but everybody in that town was so kind and so giving of their time and so caring for suicide prevention. At least when I went there, it was just a fantastic experience for me.
Sure. And then if you're not speaking and you're just looking to travel somewhere, where would you recommend going or where would you like to try to go?
Uh, I'd have to say Jamaica, because that's where my family's from. And then next to that, Italy, Spain, or Paris.
Okay, perfect. I've heard you speak before about how big of an impact Dwayne The Rock Johnson's had on your life. And I wanted to ask you, who are some of the most influential people on your life that inspire you, that make you want to be a better version of yourself? Is The Rock, would that be one of the top people? And who else perhaps?
So two top people are my mom and dad.
Mhm.
Pat and Debbie Hines, who adopted me, maybe their son, and gave me this chance at life and gave me all this opportunity. But yeah, I have a great affinity for The Rock. His story, when I read it in The Rock Says, there was a passage in that book that talked about defeating depression through faith in yourself and in the human condition and really in God. And I found that passage very helpful. And in a time when I was suicidal and I almost took my life, I read that passage and it saved my life. Like people say that my story saved their life. That story and that message saved my life at the time. It was before my attempt off the Golden Gate Bridge. It was at 19 when I was going to attempt.
Wow.
And I carried that book around with me. It was signed by The Rock. My dad had gotten it signed by The Rock, and I took that book to every psych ward I ever went into. I was in 9 psych ward stage for suicidal crisis,
Wow.
and I think it was my 5th psych ward stay. My father brought the book in for me because he knew I needed it. And there was a young man in the psych ward, a young Mexican kid named Eduardo, and he looked at me, saw the book. He goes, "Hey man, I need that." I was like, "No man, it's signed by The Rock. You're tripping." He goes, "Yeah, but it already helped you. I need it more than you." I was like, "Oh man." but I realized, I know, or I did know word for word what that passage said. It was etched in my brain. And the Rock's message did that for me. Maybe it can do it for this kid. I gave him the book, gave it up. And, true to the Rock's nature, he's been helping people with mental health for a long time. He goes out and he shares his story, and he even talks about his depression and when he broke his back and all this stuff. And he's inspired so many young men and women alike to stay here and fight the pain. I love that. It's wonderful.
Yes. This next question is a little bit tricky. So
Okay.
think about it a little bit. Would you rather have a cameo in Deadpool 3 or a cameo in a movie with The Rock?
The Rock.
Really? Well, imagine if we could get The Rock in the Deadpool movie.
Why couldn't The Rock be in the Deadpool movie? Why don't we just make it both happen?
Are you gonna watch Black Adam when it comes out?
Oh, you better believe it. I'm an equal opportunity comic book collector.
Okay, so we got DC Comics as well as Marvel.
My downstairs room is all DC. This is
okay.
Yeah.
He got really big for that role. I mean, he was big already, but you see in the pictures on Instagram and like a lot of the actors' bodies, they'll not CGI, but they'll give him some padding or something, look a little bit bigger, but
he doesn't need to.
He does not need it at all.
No, he's never needed it.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great movie. The last thing I wanted to ask you. So I've heard that at the end of some of your speeches that you give, you ask everyone to stand and repeat after you, and you give a kind of a farewell message. I would like to know how that developed, how you came up with that, and would you be willing to share a little bit of that message right now?
Yeah, you bet. So there's a couple of things I say to folks, and I don't know if you've seen both of them or just one, but one of them is I say, for all the people in this audience in that kind of pain, we are going to yell at the tops of our lungs, like their lives depend on it, be here tomorrow. And then in unison, I say be here tomorrow, and then they say be here tomorrow. And you're talking about, potentially thousands of people yelling be here tomorrow. I'll never forget being at the place where U2 used to play in Dublin, Ireland, and 7,000 high school kids are yelling be here tomorrow. It was mind blowing.
Wow.
Just in that audience, just to hear the acoustics alone in that beautiful amphitheater. But I've done it with 20,000 people in the Sprint Center. It's an unbelievable experience each time. But think about all the people in those audiences that are struggling right then and there. And they're like 1,000 people, 7,000 people, 20,000 people are telling me that I deserve to be here. That's impactful. The other thing I do is say, I'm going to say my name, you say your name, and then repeat after me. And I say, Kevin, they say their name.
Yeah.
You are wonderful, the greatest, epic, amazing, phenomenal, gorgeous, and what that is retraining the negative inner critical voice. Every human on the planet has a negative inner critical voice that we often listen to. That's the biggest problem. Too many people are so focused on the negative when it comes about, as opposed to combating the negative with the positive. To retrain the negative inner critical voice, which is born in all of us, when every spiteful, hateful, hurtful, mean thing has ever been done to us as a child, we backbrain that stuff. It stays in our memory forever. It's embedded in our brains, in a pocket memory in our brain. And when we struggle, it comes out and we internalize it and we force it on ourselves. So instead of saying negative things in the mirror, say positive things. It's the same notion about doing that with a big crowd. Is like, you are amazing, you are phenomenal, you are the greatest. And once you do that over and over again, and you repeat that, you will believe it. So there's the reason I do that to people is the old, what is every major faith built upon? Recite a prayer, repeat a prayer, believe a prayer. Recite, repeat, believe. There's a scientific method behind this. If you recite positive things about yourself, if you repeat positive things about yourself, eventually you will believe positive things about yourself. That is a known fact. It is literally scientific. So let's help people in every audience do that.
Amen. It's a perfect message, spreading the positivity. I love it. I love it, Kevin. So you're on Facebook. We got our YouTube channel. You're on Instagram. Where else can people follow you? I know you mentioned the comic coming up. What else do you have coming up in the near future?
Well, we're making the film The Net right now, about the 85-year battle to raise a net and railing at the Golden Gate Bridge to stop suicides there. The net is being put in place right now. As of 2023, not one more soul will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge, and it will become the largest, brightest, and most powerful beacon for suicide prevention right around the world.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome.
That's awesome. We worked hard for that. Everyone involved in that worked really hard to make that happen. We just released the Hines podcast, HINESIGHTS podcast, where all podcasts can be found. And that podcast is changing lives and helping people all over the world. So, is
it on Spotify, Apple Music?
It's on Spotify, Apple. It's on iHeartRadio.
Perfect.
iHeartMedia, rather. It's on most podcast platforms.
All right, everybody listening, make sure to go check it out. Stay up to date with Kevin. Kevin, anything else? Or
we drop podcasts every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We drop a YouTube video on youtube.com/Kevin Hines every Friday, a mental health hack to help you change your life. There are 534 videos, all designed to change your life, on the YouTube channel. Take them, they're yours, they're free. And if you are in crisis right now, if you are thinking of suicide, stop, breathe. Take 40 more deep breaths, resonance breathing, learn what that is, and then realize you are valued, worthy, and you matter, and suicide is not the answer. And text CNQR to 741-741, the crisis text line, if you're in America, or call 1-800-273-8255, +1 for the military. If you're international, search suicide hotline or helpline. You will find one, and call it or text it. You deserve to be here. Suicide is not the answer.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate you coming in and talking today.
Thank you for having me.
Your message is a powerful one, and I know it's going to help change the lives of so many people. So thank you again.
Appreciate that.